Are Hexwraiths any good in patch 5.3? All that's changed in the latest patch is a highly welcome buff to leadership, but we're going to cover them anyway since I'm doing the faction freshly as a whole. So let's go into the ins and outs of these mounted stalkers. Recruited for a pretty hefty 1400 dark magic and 350 upkeep. This gets you 60 entities on Ultra as we should expect from old school, old world cavalry. Health is 7,440 spread between them. Armor is 0, of course, with 55% physical resistance, giving them the same damage dampening rather than damage prevention we discussed for Hexwraiths. And sorry I didn't pronounce that faithfully, wrong ethnic background. Leadership is now 50 rather than 40 default. Speed of 94 and charge speed 110 are pretty good numbers, way above traditional heavy cavalry for the regular speed. Melee attack starts at only 32, with strikes being both magical attack and inflicting frostbite, a minus 30% speed debuff that makes running away from them even harder. Attack interval of 4.6 is still better than the 5.1 we'd expect from Lance Cavalry. There is no splash damage. Melee defense begins at 30, and I'll call that mediocre. It could be a lot worse. Weapon damage of 42 all goes straight to armor piercing, no base damage whatsoever, which is good because for an elite unit, that's nothing special for total damage. On the other hand, Blood Knights favor base damage with a big fat chunk of armor piercing tossed in. Here, the charge bonus of 40 is relatively restrained, and mass for game purposes is 750, or far less than we'd expect from a lot of cavalry, making pulling out of blobs problematic. The unit causes both fear and terror, is not considered a siege attacker, and has Vanguard Deployment and Strider. In other words, it's not really heavy cavalry, and it's too elite to be light cavalry. It's essentially a ghostly take on medium weight melee cav, with the speed of light cavalry and the hitting power of Black Knights, but all 2 AP, and with the vulnerability of ethereal units to magical attack. And that's not in terms of hit points, it's in terms of no armor. In the Redline skills, we call upon Evil Souls once more, granting at 3 pips plus 8 melee attack and 15% spell resistance, and spells are indeed one way of really hurting this kind of unit. Silver bullets will work reliably regardless. However, it is Dread Knights that affects rank 7 Hexwraiths, offering plus 12% weapon strength, plus 12 flat charge bonus, so from 40 to 52, and ward save 8% for good measure. In the tech tree, we're once again looking at soul binders to reduce upkeep, recruitment, and raise dead costs by 10% respectively, Nightmarish Reaping for plus 4 melee attack, and a hefty plus 15% weapon strength, and Spirit Shackles, offering doubled healing cap in battle, and 500 barrier hit points for sparing real hit points on the way in, and something possible to regenerate once the immediate skirmish is done. So how do we use Hexwraiths? Well, we've already discussed the vulnerabilities, which are obvious, and therefore a lot of people shunned this unit. It's probably very hard to use in multiplayer because of the focus human beings will put on the job. In campaign, it's a little bit of a different story. Hexwraiths were infantry at 60 entities on Ultra, which is unusually tiny. Hexwraiths are a normal cavalry unit size, do similar damage, but are far faster than the norm. So what does that mean? Flanking? Yes, it can mean flanking. But flanking is hard in this game because even the AI is smart enough to constantly put things in your way, like hounds its own cavalry, and unless those things are magical attack, and in fairness some are, Hexwraiths have the speed to clear hounds from the field, the power to do so, and both the speed and armor piercing to be monstrously effective against the heavy cavalry served up by lots of factions in this game. For ethereal units, it's always about matchups, but it's also about the basic stats. I keep going back to the speed. It's speed that lets this unit catch up to, let's say, Cold One Riders, slow them down another 30%, and then just butcher them through armor 90. That's something it can potentially do unaided, which is important because you can't always babysit your flankers. It's the speed that makes them relevant in a wide variety of circumstances, able to keep pace with non-Isabella buffed dire wolves, and almost as fast as fell bats. And like dire wolves, Strider means forests simply don't bother them. The flip side is that the hitting power is not the same as Black Knights with lances or Blood Knights, but if you can keep them going, Hexwraiths are built to stay in the fight and keep dishing that damage out. The shortcomings of Hexwraiths beg for magical support. A little Danse Macabre will just make them better. Bloodlust and Red Fury means something when they boost armor-piercing damage, and that's all Hexwraiths have. There's literally no waste. Poison or Soul Blight on the enemy reduces incoming damage. Healing is healing, it helps. Hero support of any kind is welcome, and unlike Hexwraiths, A White King has a lot of armor, so he can tank even against magical attack units, and he hits magical attack as well. These are the ins and outs of Hexwraiths. Although they are fragile in certain situations, they're also not a unit that enemies want to meet in a dark city street away from friendly magical support. That's the paradox of the unit. A well-prepared enemy will put them back in the grave in short order, but an unprepared opponent will be shredded. Speed is therefore your greatest weapon using the Hexwraiths. The less prepared an opponent is for you at any particular point, the more that local superiority will result in a breakthrough that helps your army everywhere. Let's just keep in mind that even under ideal circumstances, physical resistance diminishes damage, it doesn't prevent damage. So high amounts of base damage will blow past the resistance. You need ways to dilute that damage, or just to eliminate the dealer of that damage faster. The other thing to point out is that aside from cost and being considered small entities, Karn Wraiths don't really have any advantages over the Hexwraiths. Well, there's one other thing: availability. In terms of utility, Hexwraiths are far superior. Just keep in mind that utility is exactly where they shine brightest. It's not in damage, although you can and will buff that a lot. Take care, and have fun charging out from a tree line like the trees don't even exist. Crossbowmen just love that one. I'm being sarcastic.